Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down.
Alright, here we are, folks.
Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Just like the sunrise, we gonna let it rain.
Welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that since Simon's down in Boulders, folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa. Welcome back, folks. It is Monday, May 6, 2024. Not clickbait. We do have an interview scheduled with Athol Trollip, the provincial chairman of the ActionSA Party for the Eastern Cape. However, you know, when this happens, you don't know what happens in South Africa. So I sent him a request to reconfirm yesterday, and he sent me a reply with a thumbs up, saying that we are, in fact, confirmed at about 10 o'clock yesterday morning, my time. So afternoon yesterday. He wanted me to confirm that we were on for today. I subsequently sent him the Zoom information and then the link to the video. And neither of those have a double tick mark in WhatsApp. They just have a single tick mark, which means sent but not confirmed received. When something like this happens in South Africa, my first thought is a phone has been misplaced or stolen. I don't know what's going on, but at the moment, no response from Athol Trollip. He's a very professional gentleman, former mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, while as a member of the Democratic Alliance, a party that he had ties going back to the 1980s, even before it existed in its antecedent predecessors. But he is not here at the moment, so I will stick with this for a little bit, and hopefully he'll show up and we'll be able to do the interview with Athol Trollip. Short of that, ladies and gentlemen, in the meantime, there's a breaking story in George in the Western Cape of South Africa where a building under construction apparently has collapsed. Reports of 30 people currently buried in the rubble. Rescue teams are making their way to the scene in George, trying to sort out what's going on here. It's a breaking story. Reports coming in, video from reporters in George on the scene, and it is a bit frightening. Our resident firefighter may, in fact, who knows, may wind up there going. We don't know who will go to rescue, but at the moment, this is a very dicey situation. News 24 has now carried the story. Let's go to that very quickly and see what they've got to say about this breaking story. Ambulances rush to collapse building under construction in George. A building under construction in Victoria Street, George, has collapsed. According to a reliable source, 59 people believed to be trapped, up from 30 I reported a moment ago. Although the extent of their injuries is not clear. Emergency services were on site. The municipality said the road had been closed to allow ambulances to enter due to multiple patients. The George municipality spokesperson, Ntobeko Mangakokwengwa, said it is a building next to the municipality. The structure was about a 4 or 5 story building. It looked like a block of flats. At the moment, we don't have the exact number of injuries. Our emergency personnel and local ambulances are on the scene. Yeah, folks, that's a breaking story coming out of George in the Western Cape, where a building has collapsed. And now, according to this, 59 people are trapped in the rubble. This story is developing. We'll continue to bring you updates as possible. Again, for those of you tuning in, looking for an interview with Athol Trollip, the former mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, we expected him to be here. He confirmed he would be here, but the messages to his WhatsApp account are only getting 1 tick. I hope he's well. He's a professional gentleman and would not let us down like this, so there must be something that's come into play. In the meantime, rather than give you a clickbait, let's go ahead and take advantage of this opportunity to talk about this breaking story in George. I do have some video of that. Let me see if I can't get that up. It's not my video, so this is coming in from a journalist in, well, it's not here. Where the heck's it at? Sorry, let me try to find it again very quickly here. Save this. All right, there we go. Come on. All right, let's save this one. And then we'll bring these up. This is from a reporter that's there in George. So let me try to bring that story up very quickly here. And give me just a moment here. Again, Athol Trollip is currently not with us. I apologize for that, but events beyond my control at the moment. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got coming up here. And we'll bring that screen up here. As I said, this is coming from George just moments ago.
This is Christy Colbert for the George Herald.
Colbert for the George Herald.
And I'm currently on a scene in Victoria Street where the building has seemingly collapsed. And according to unconfirmed information, there are people trapped underneath. I can't get too close because of the police tape.
As I said, that report now coming from News 24 is that 59 people are trapped in the rubble of that building. Christy Colbert for the George Herald on the scene in the Western Cape. Another video coming in from that scene here. These are brief videos. This is a breaking news story, folks. So
this is Christy Colbert for the George Herald. I'm currently still on scene in Victoria Street.
You can see the building collapse in the background there. And it looks like
story
rebar
building while under construction collapsed on some construction workers. At this stage, it's unclear how many people were involved in the incident.
59 is the latest report.
All emergency services are on scene, police.
And this road has been closed down by the police. No one else can get through. Victoria Street in George is where this is occurring, folks. One more video here that's come in. Let me get to that one very quickly here. Also, I believe this was from Christy Colbert again. This one's a little hard to figure out what's going on here, so I'll just show it briefly, but it's difficult to figure out what is actually happening with this video here. Oh, that's the actual collapse. Oh my goodness. Oh, folks, that's the actual collapse. This is video coming in of the building actually collapsing. Let's watch that again. The building is in the background, the dark spot under that roof overhang. Wow, let's watch. This is the actual collapse of the building. It came down with quite a thud there. Here it comes. There it goes. Wow. Horrific situation. Hopefully there are no fatalities, but that looks like a very bad situation in George in the Western Cape, folks. Developing story coming out of the Western Cape, where News 24 now reports at least 59 people have been trapped under that rubble. That's the information we have, and I'm looking to see if there's any more information on it. It was last updated 40 minutes ago. Let me see if the Independent Online has any news on that. So we're just trying to get more reports on this. I'll go to, of course, the news source of the day, which is Twitter. Victoria Street. Let me see if I can find anything on that. Victoria Street, George. These are, unfortunately, names are not very helpful because, yeah, building collapse in Victoria Street. What else do we got here? Not much. It's showing me Victoria Bridge, Victoria Street. This is London, Australia, and only one thing in here, two things in here. The George Herald is carrying the story, and News 24 is also carrying the story. George Herald, of course, a bilingual paper. So building collapse. And that's it. There's nothing else on this at the moment. That's unfortunate, but that's what we have on this building collapse at the moment. Let me see if IOL has got any additional information. As I said, the story is breaking. So let's see if IOL has anything on it. No, nothing. So this is News 24. It's got the breaking news. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, let me look and see if we've got any update. No, Athol Trollip, nothing coming in yet. So my apologies, folks, not trying to clickbait you. Grasshopper says, not a fan of the guest. I know he'll make up the 100 push-ups and run around the compound. Grasshopper. Well, I'm not sure why you're not a fan. That's interesting. Val Cooper's here. Sue Walsh, Teresa Hendo in from the UK. Dylan Comrick from the Western Cape. Grasshopper, Garrett Gillich, Somerset West. And Arctic is somewhere probably in an aircraft flying over U.S. airspace. No doubt taking his chances, pushing the window, pushing the envelope, intruding into restricted airspace. Who knows what he's up to? Hey, Arctic, how's it going? And then Jan Fillon is here, and Keith Alderson in from Coventry. Val Cooper as well. So I think we've covered everyone in the chat. Again, folks, apologies, not an attempt to clickbait you. This is simply... actually, I can see the building here, a photograph of it when it was under construction. Let me save that very quickly, then we'll bring that up. That's coming into me. Yeah, and here's, oh my goodness, here's a picture of it after it's collapsed. Wow. This is not looking very good. So let me just get this up to you here. Again, Athol Trollip not tuning in with us so far. I'm not sure what's going on there. But let's go ahead and bring these two things up. And I'll do that for you right now. So here's what the building looked like under construction, apparently. And you can see it's got a image out there to show you what is coming in the future. So here is that building right there on Victoria Street in George, which was under construction. Multi-story building. I'm not sure what the purpose of it was. Probably flats like the one next to it there. But that's what it looked like before 2 o'clock local time, South Africa today. Now what it looks like is the following. Let's zoom in on this one here. And I will bring that picture up for you in just a moment. And then you'll be able to see what the situation looks like post. This is taken from another building nearby. This is the building in George. And you can see the dust on the cars down there at the bottom. They were covered in dust when that building collapsed. And here you can see the rebarb. And oh my goodness, this is absolutely horrific, folks. Breaking situation in George in the Western Cape. Absolutely horrific. 59 people reported trapped under that rubble, according to News 24. I have no other confirmed reports. We have no confirmed reports from authorities about this. Imagine that rescue dogs will be sent there along with rescue workers. Recovering people from a situation like this is very dicey as the ground is unsafe. The collapsed structure, particularly in this case, it looks like it's just pancaked on top of people. That looks quite grim, as Garrett says. Unfortunately, folks, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but I anticipate that we'll probably hear of a number of fatalities from this building collapse, most likely. That is quite horrific and sad to see. Anyway, that's the story. We're doing breaking news at this hour. I'll change the description of this video after the video is over so that people won't be coming to it looking for the interview. Construction Mafia didn't get paid. I'm not sure what happened there, Val, but this is very dangerous. Yeah, definitely fatalities under that. There's no way that a lot of people survived, unfortunately. That looks quite tragic. Again, folks, that is the situation in George. There's no further information this hour. Hopefully information will become available. Unfortunately, the information will likely be grim news. For the loved ones of those in the construction site, our thoughts and prayers go out to them and hope that your loved ones are as safe as possible under that debris and can be rescued as quickly as possible. Of course, we saw the cargo ship slam into the support structure, the pillar for the Francis Scott Key Bridge over the Patapsco River in the Chesapeake Bay recently in Baltimore, leading to the death of 6 construction workers who were on the bridge at the time in a horrific situation. And thoughts there were for their welfare, but there was no chance of them surviving. This looks like a similar situation, although we're not going to make any predictions or estimations as to what's happening. We do express our concern and our thoughts and prayers to the folks whose loved ones were on that work site in George on Victoria Street, where a building has collapsed at about 2:09 local time in George, South Africa, just a short while ago. Not all that long ago. So that's about 2 hours now, and there have been no forthcoming news updates. I imagine it's probably a bit of a chaotic scene on the ground as folks attempt to recover and find those alive. This is a very difficult and tedious rescue operation. It's shocking that 59 people were in that building, and what caused it to collapse, the structure obviously had some issues. What a sad situation and what a tragedy. The people who live in flats next to that now forever will live next to the building that collapsed, and what a sad state of affairs for them as well. Anyway, that's the situation. Athol Trollip, I have him having received a message now. His phone is turned on. Hopefully we'll see him in a moment. So hang around, folks. We're gonna hang tight. He's read the messages, and hopefully Athol Trollip will be joining us now. Again, as the provincial chair for the ActionSA party in Eastern Cape, probably a very busy guy. But like I said, when you don't get that double tick, I've now got the second tick, which means his phone has come back on the network, and I've got the blue tick mark, which means he's read it. So hopefully Athol will join us. Still holding. There he is. Okay, cool. All right, folks, thanks for hanging around with us. Okay, cool. Here comes Athol Trollip. All right, let's get him into the conversation here, and he'll join us on the program. So thank you all for sticking with us while we wait for him to arrive. As I said, busy guy. They've probably got a lot going on there. So again, breaking news out of George, where a building has collapsed on Victoria Street. News 24. Oh, he looks like he's on the road. News 24 has reported at least 59 people trapped in the debris from that building. There's Athol Trollip, apparently located somewhere in the Eastern Cape where there's no mobile connection. Athol, hello.
Hi, Chris. I'm sorry, man. I got held up, and I'll be in my home in about 2 minutes, so I can chat with you until I can get into my office. Okay. But I'm sorry, I've been late. Sorry.
No, it's quite all right, Athol. As I said, I said you're an honorable gentleman, and I know you didn't ghost us because you're very reliable, but you're a busy guy. I figured probably something going on. But I did tell my viewers I get very nervous all the time when someone in South Africa, I send a WhatsApp message and there's only one tick mark. Oftentimes it means the phone has been lost or stolen in South Africa. So the third option, of course, is that you're out of range of a mobile network. So that's what I figured. You're probably doing something in the Eastern Cape. But we thank you for your dogged determination to join us. I've been reporting, I don't know if you've heard about this, about 2 hours ago, a building under construction in George has collapsed. News 24 is now reporting 59 construction workers reportedly trapped in the debris. I've seen photographs of it. It looks pretty horrific and grim. Thoughts and prayers to the folks and to their family members. And hopefully rescue dogs and teams can get on site. Appears to be a little bit of chaos at the scene right now. And that's what's unfolding. So while we were waiting for you to come on, we've been reporting on that breaking story in George. It's pretty sad. Hopefully. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that I spent the last week in the district municipality of Joe Gabi, which is on the South African Lesotho border. And we were focusing on illegal foreigners doing, trading with South Africans. And one of the areas that we focused on, Chris, was in the hardware business. And illegal Pakistanis have taken over and sort of commandeered and formed a cartel in the hardware business in rural areas. Excuse me. And obviously they're able to push prices down and people are chasing, good value prices. But in the meantime, they are buying products, hardware products such as bricks, concrete lintels and wood, etc., that is not South African Bureau of Standards approved. And it might be seem like a good win when you're building your house to get bricks at 500 Rand cheaper. But when your house falls down around your ears, it's not cheap anymore because you've got to do it all over again. So I don't know what caused the building to collapse in George, but it is terrible, especially when there are people trapped in there.
No, absolutely. We don't know what the cause is, but that could, in fact, be a contributing factor. Athol's dropping off right now. I'll let him go off, and then he'll join us once he gets in the house there, folks. Another issue here. Let me go ahead and switch over to this so you don't have just a blank screen there while he's getting sorted, just so I'll focus on myself there. So, I had a problem similar here in the States about 20 years ago. Often saw that we had criminal alien invaders, illegal aliens who were working in the construction industry in Maryland. And they were building these $500,000, $750,000 residential properties. And many of these people, while they worked very hard, and they're probably honest people, at least when it comes to work, certainly not when it comes to crossing our border illegally, they're criminals in that respect, virtually none of them were licensed plumbers, electricians, HVAC technicians, masonry workers, none of that stuff, or carpenters. And as a consequence, there was a lot of on-the-job learning or uncertified work performed. I have to tell you that I don't want to be the owner of a house that cost me $750,000, over 15 million Rand, built by people who aren't licensed or certified to install my electrical system, my heater, my geyser, or the structure of my building. That's a pretty frightening prospect. But that's been going on for years, and it leads to dangerous situations. We don't know if that's what's happened in George, but the insight there from Athol Trollip is interesting. So hopefully he'll join us here shortly. Just hang tight, folks, and it'll be a shorter interview with him. And what I'll do after the fact is I will edit this video, and then I will upload just the portion with Athol Trollip. And again, I'll reload this video with other information to inform people that it was actually not the interview with Athol, but a report on the building collapse in George in the the Western Cape. Sorry to say the Eastern Cape there. I've got Eastern Cape on my brain because Athol's an Eastern Cape guy. Buy a house that's at least 10 years old and fix it up yourself, says Arctic. That's an idea. but I don't like to buy used things. A lot of weight of steel. Rebar has to be added during the construction of concrete. Yep, which is unstable until the concrete is poured and sets. Yeah, Keith, you could see rebar that was laying there in that twisted mess. It's from that collapse. So hopefully Athol will be with us in just a couple of minutes. Give me a second here. Let me go back and see if we've got any updates on this story. No, there's no updates from that story. So we'll keep that. Hopefully when we get to the news program at 6 p.m. South African time, we will have more updates. That'll be 4 hours after the events, and hopefully authorities will have given us some information. But hang tight, folks. If you are waiting for Athol Trollip, he was delayed. He has popped in on his mobile device, and will be joining us from inside his studio here shortly. So hang tight. Former mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, and the last time I was in South Africa, I was supposed to link up with him, but he lives a little outside of Nelson Mandela Bay these days, and so we didn't get a chance to link. If I do get back for this trip, perhaps I'll get a chance to link up with him. Athol Trollip and I appeared on a panel that was hosted by Worldview, including Dr. Kenneth Mashwe and Dr. Peter Groenewald and others back in August of 2022. And yeah, so we appeared on that panel together, and we've been in touch ever since then. I had him on as a guest previously, so we're going to talk about ActionSA, the May 29th elections, and see what he's got to say. I'm not usually a fan of people who spend most of their adult life in politics, but I have to say that this gentleman certainly fits the bill of someone who's professional and seeks the best outcomes, at least from my experience, although Grasshopper doesn't seem to agree. Not sure why. Here we go. So Athol Trollip coming in now. Well, he is coming in, but he's not here yet. Let me take a look real quick, see what's going on with this connection. All right, here we go. Whoops.
Hello, Chris.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. All right. That looks a little different and a little bit better than the mobile. All we got is your chin. Are you able to adjust the camera at all without losing the, I guess it's green screen. Yeah. There. Oh, there you go. Just a little bit more. There you go. Perfect. All right. All right. Excellent. Okay, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for your patience and sticking with us. Folks, welcome back to the program. This is Chris Wyatt Reports on the Indaba Africa channel. I'm Chris, retired U.S. Army Colonel, sitting in central Pennsylvania. And you know what? I've got to change that background because after Athol Trollip put his lovely background in there, mine looks kind of like a piker here. So let me just take a quick and change my background, virtual background here. I'll pick one that's appropriate for the Eastern Cape. Let me see if I've got an image here for the Eastern Cape. I don't think I do. I've got Western Cape. Here's some mountains. That'll work. How's that? That looks a little bit better.
Beautiful.
All right, there we go. That's a South African scene behind me there. Welcome back to the program. This is an interview with the provincial chairman of the Eastern Cape for the ActionSA party, none other than Athol Trollip, former mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, and once upon a time a co-panelist with me at a meeting in Somerset West. Athol, you're obviously quite busy, but let me ask you, hoe gaan dit?
Ja, dit gaan baie goed, Chris. Jou Afrikaans is nogal goed.
Ek praat nie Afrikaans nie.
I've always been amazed at how much you know about our country, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. Even your greeting in Afrikaans, not perfect, but still good.
Not as harsh as the judgment from Ronaldo Gos, but kinder than Ronaldo. He's always giving me a hard time about my G's. Anyway, but I think I do say "hatful" pretty well. I think I got that one right.
There we go.
All right, well, listen, Athol, wow, there's something big happening in South Africa on May 29th, the national provincial elections. ActionSA is a player in this. The party, founded by Herman Mashaba, seems to be making inroads, but there has been a development in the past several months. That's the formation of the so-called MK party, named after the liberation arm, the armed wing of the ANC, but claiming it's its own party under former President Jacob Zuma, MK. They seem to be getting a lot of traction in KwaZulu-Natal in particular, but also potentially in Gauteng. Is that eating away your support, or are you seeing your support rise, or what's happening? Because the polls are very conflicting. The one thing that's consistent in the polls is that the ANC is declining. MK has come out of nowhere. ActionSA numbers are up and down in these polls, so I'm really not sure what to believe. I get the sense that you guys are getting traction, but that's just my sense. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, first of all, Chris, it's always very difficult to poll a party that hasn't participated in an election. I mean, there's no comparative figure. So it's very difficult, and we're a new party, and so are MK. But let me just get the MK thing out of the way, because I'm not a spokesperson for MK or the ANC. MK is just another breakaway party from the African National Congress, and I think it's just a natural attrition. No political party lasts forever, and I think the ANC are at the stage of waning, and they've been shedding support. First of all, they lost support to the UDM of Bantu Holomisa, followed by another big splinter with COPE. But I think a lot of the COPE people went back to the ANC. And then, of course, there was a breakaway with Julius Malema's EFF. And now there's a breakaway, ostensibly under two people, Mr. Khoza and Mr. Jacob Zuma. Now, the original founder has been kicked out, so have a lot of other people. And it seems wherever Jacob Zuma is involved in politics, there's always intrigue and allegations of spying and, intelligence and counterintelligence. So MK is in a bit of a mess at the moment. Yes, they have come and made a big bang in South African politics, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, because they're an ethnic-based party, pretty much under Jacob Zuma's leadership. But also, there's a saying, Chris, that says, when thieves fall out, all hell breaks loose. And it seems that there's some major fallout happening in MK, especially around control of funds. So now the original founder has been kicked out, and he's the signatory to the bank accounts. So all of a sudden, everything's stalled. And there have been a number of other people kicked out of the party, youth leaders and various other people. So all's not going well. And a number of big public meetings in the Eastern Cape and in Gauteng were abandoned because there wasn't a big turnout. So I don't think it's all good for MK. And I think the polls initially had them around 14%. But I think that's very speculative. I think it'll be somewhere between 7 and 10%. And even that will be a significant breakaway from the ANC. So that's as far as MK goes. As I said, I'm not a spokesperson for them. But for ActionSA, we only participated in 6 municipalities in the last local government election, 6 out of 278. We were able to get 550,000 votes. And we were able to attract 22% in Soweto, and no other party other than the ANC had ever got more than 10% in Soweto. And we got around about 21% in affluent white communities in Johannesburg and also in Pretoria. So we have been able to attract support across ethnic groups and rich and poor communities, which is something quite unique in South African politics. And, a lot of water has gone under the bridge since 2021. It's been nearly 3 years now since the last election. And if I can just reflect on my time in ActionSA, you'll recall that I'd retired from politics very happily, having left my party that I was a member of, an active member and a representative for 38 years. And after 2 years being out of politics and very happily plowing my own furrow in the Eastern Cape because I'm a farmer and that's what I was doing. I was consulting in the agricultural field. I had Mr. Herman Mashaba, who was the mayor of Joburg when I was the mayor of PE, called me one day and said, could we have a discussion? I didn't really want to go because I knew what he wanted to do. Anyway, out of respect, I had a meeting with him, and after a 4-hour-long meeting, I pretty much said to him, look, strength your South Africa, because the current opposition parties haven't been able to.
Looks like his internet's been hit there. Folks, we're still here, but Athol Trollip's connection, maybe there's a cable theft going on right now. Hopefully he'll come back. Athol, we can't hear you at the moment or see you if you're still connected, if you can hear me. Interesting explanation as to how he wound up with ActionSA. 4 hours to convince him to come back into politics. That was a Herculean effort by Herman Mashaba, I'd have to say. Hopefully we'll get him back here in just a moment, but completely cut off there. Oops, look, he's trying to get back there. There he is. He's back. So I think maybe you're experiencing cable theft or something like that as we speak. You're on mute. Your mic's on mute. The last thing we heard was that it took Herman Mashaba 4 hours to convince you, and that's where it kind of broke off.
Okay, well, I don't know what you were drinking out of that bottle, but as soon as you had a sip of that bottle, I lost my connection.
It's a magical elixir.
Anyway, after a 4-hour meeting, I basically said to Herman Mashaba, I said, look, I'm not interested. I've had enough. And he looked back at me and said, have you done enough? Now, Chris, you know the Eastern Cape as well as most people in South Africa. And it's a pretty much a broken, dysfunctional province, but probably one of the most beautiful. And I thought about that unbelievable question all the way home. It was a vexing question. And when I got home, I said to my wife, I'm going back into politics. I thought she'd leave me immediately. And she said to me, it's in your blood, you must do it. So now I've been doing that for just about nearly 2.5 years. And in those 2.5 years, we've set up structures in every single municipality in the Eastern Cape. It took me about 16 years to achieve that in the DA, considering that most of this province is deeply rural and not your typical kind of DA constituency. And it's been amazing what we've been able to do in 2.5 years. So I believe that the polling is a little bit out, because I don't know if anyone's doing any polling in the deep mountains of the Jogabi area, on the border of Lesotho, and on the border of KZN in places like Bizana. And so I just think that we're a dark horse in this election. And our president's got a good name. He's got a good reputation. And I think we're the party to watch. I'm not saying we're going to, be the official opposition. I think that would be completely a pipe dream. But I really do think that, the polls are putting us between 3 and 4.5%. And I think we might get double that. And if we get close to 8 to 10%, I think we'll make a hell of a big difference in the politics of this country, because we're heading into coalition governments in a big way. Because the days of, domination by one party, political party, are over in South Africa. We've seen it at local government level, and I believe it's coming to us at provincial and national level.
Well, I think that's a fair statement, Athol, as far as a dark horse. And that's why I asked the question, because it seemed like ActionSA was getting a lot of traction in by-elections, in Gauteng in particular, a while back, and also a lot of... the press hasn't been bad. I mean, the legacy media in South Africa isn't always kind, but it hasn't been bad, and that doesn't hurt. But my interest was exactly what you've talked about here. I just ran for office myself and lost badly in my primary race. Learned some very difficult personal lessons about politics. It doesn't matter how many doors you knock on and how enthusiastic people are. That's great. It's how many of them rock up at the polls. Now, that's going to be the challenge, I think, for all political parties. I think that's the biggest party that's most concerned about that is probably the African National Congress. They go to these rallies and they think they have a lot of support. But as we saw in 2021 municipal elections, they shed voters in KZN like viral particles, just sloughing off of them, because people were so angry about the insurrection inside the ANC that was played out in KZN in July 2021 after Zuma turned himself in late in violation of the court order at Escort. So what are your feelings? Do you think that the enthusiasm is there? You'll be able to get people out? I mean, if ActionSA could make some waves in Eastern Cape, that would be pretty significant. ANC has had a hammerlock on that province for decades.
Well, Chris, you make a really... I'm sorry about your primary. Politics is not for sissies, though. It's a hell of a... It's a slog, and you get so excited and you think you're going to get it done, and then people let you down. They don't pitch up. They're not committed. So politics is very difficult, and it can take you up very high and then drop you down a terrible precipice. I know you'll get elected one day. You've put enough into politics. I think you've got it in your blood. But I want to just say that I think our greatest challenge has been to get South Africans to sort of cut their political umbilical cord. And Black South Africans in particular were excluded from politics for hundreds of years in South Africa. And when, liberation came along under President Mandela, there was this kind of lifetime commitment to voting for the African National Congress, the Party of Liberation, which has been the story of Africa. But eventually that commitment does wane. And we've seen, Chris, in 2021, 80 in South Africa did not vote. Those are people who'd voted before and were registered to vote. Only 17 million did vote. So
we're having trouble with that connection again, folks. It's unfortunately, he was referring to people
in the last election. If they mobilized to vote, we could get a new election. We could have a new government overnight. So the biggest problem, though, is to break generational voting patterns. I'm a perfect example. I voted. I was a representative for the Democratic Alliance for the DP, and my father was a PFP representative, and my grandfather was a member of parliament for the United Party. They were all one political party that morphed into others. So I also voted for the party of my forebears and the party of my father and my grandfather. And I thought that that would be the way it would be until, I quit politics or stopped voting. But I did realize after I left the DA for my own very good reasons, which are not worthy mentioning on this program, but I left the DA because I lost my conviction, essentially. And I voted for the DA in the next election because I could either vote for the ANC or the DA. And then Herman Mashaba mobilized me to get involved, and I did. And I just think that we can offer something to those 18 million South Africans that didn't vote, offer them a different option. We're a new political party. What brings us together, black and white, essentially, is that we're gatvol. You said that word very nicely, which means we've really had enough of the current establishment. And it's been really exciting being in a party of people from all different political persuasions that are coming together in a new political party because they've had enough of the current political establishment. Now, that's quite exciting. And, I've seen what's happened in the black communities in our country where blind loyalty was determined how you voted. And obviously there was a lot of intimidation. The ANC always mobilizes its constituency in the last week or so, and they're very good at squeezing their voters, and they have subliminal, worse than subliminal racism. They push their voters into a corner and say, you've got to vote for the party of your forebears. Otherwise, you will lose everything. You will go back to apartheid. And that's the big scarecrow that they use all the time. But, the one thing about the advancement of time is that people learn from time. And people have seen that no one has lost their grant anywhere in South Africa, whether it's in the Western Cape, under DA administration, or in KZN under an IFP administration. No one loses their grant. No one gets punished for the way they vote. So I think we're headed for a big thing, especially that more than half of the electorate are in the wilderness, so to speak. They're just not voting at the moment. If they are mobilized to vote for a new political dispensation, which is what we believe we offer, man, then we could surprise everybody.
Well, I agree 100%. It's interesting you talk about blind loyalty. The Republican Party, of course, was founded on the issue of abolition, a single issue party in the United States to end the institution of slavery. They formed in the 1850s and got their first president elected, Abraham Lincoln, in 1860. When the states went into rebellion, it was Republicans who drafted the 13th Amendment, which formally ended slavery, the 14th and 15th, which gave citizenship and also voting rights. But the Republicans, as a consequence of that, had blind loyalty from the African-American, Black American population from the 1860s all the way until the New Deal in the 1930s, when Roosevelt wrested away from them by giving handouts. Up until then, they voted 90+%, and then the whole thing switched almost overnight. So it can happen quickly. For whatever reason, you can get that, and I think we're probably approaching that stage right now. Just to give you an idea, this, but for the viewers, you know what I'm getting at, but I was in Northwest, my last trip out, and the Forum for Democrats, a small Tswana-based party whom I've been working with and talking to since they established a couple years ago in Zeerust, they invited me out to Rietvlei. I went out to Rietvlei, and I met folks in an informal community next to what used to be a slate mine. The owner of the land is offered to sell it to the municipality. The ANC has run that municipality since '94. They never buy it. They've made no counteroffer. They've never rejected the offer. He wants to sell the land, but they've made no effort to get it. So there are no paved roads. There is no plumbing. There's no fixed structure. There are no ablution units. The electricity is non-existent. And these people vote consistently ANC. So I asked Agogo, I said, and of course my Tswana is not as great as it should be, but I had someone interpret for me, and I asked Agogo, I said, so may I ask you a personal question? She said, yes. I said, do you vote? She goes, yes, I vote. It's my civic responsibility. I said, that's awesome. I agree. I have voted every time since the age of 18 in every election. So I appreciate that. I said, so may I ask another question? She said, sure. I said, whom do you vote for? Well, I vote for the ANC. I said, why? Because I'm supposed to. Ooh, and that's the statement right there. That's what you have to overcome. I know you know that, and that's what you're experiencing. But maybe the time is now. Maybe genoeg is genoeg. Maybe South Africans are finally becoming gatvol with this nonsense.
Well, Chris, there's a term that's used in the insurance industry called a black swan incident. And I think that South Africa might be heading towards a black swan occurrence, because we have in the Eastern Cape, for example, we've got 70% youth unemployment. And you must remember those gogos or grandmothers that you're referring to, they're the people who bear the brunt of massive unemployment. They're the people who raise their grandchildren, the children of their children. And unfortunately, because of general unemployment in the Eastern Cape being around 46%, it means that the old gogos and grandmothers and grandfathers are at home with their children that they might have educated through extraordinary sacrifices. Their children are at home because they're unemployed. So they've got to look after their children and their grandchildren, and in some cases, great-grandchildren. Now, that's taking its toll on communities in South Africa. And our economy is probably the most important aspect of this election, because unless we do something about the unemployment crisis in this country, we will have a revolution where populists promise, heaven on earth, make impossible promises. And, we've lost the momentum of the heady days of Nelson Mandela coming to power, where we had the most, advanced and respected constitution in the world. People don't trust the government anymore. So whether you're a local investor or foreign investors from the United States, people don't trust the current government. So in South Africa, we've got about 1.5 trillion rand sitting in bank accounts dormant, because local investors will not invest in the economy. And foreign investors are not going to invest unless local investors are investing. And the reason why people aren't investing is because we've allowed our infrastructure to collapse, our economic infrastructure. You mentioned potholed roads and unsurfaced roads, but our rail networks have been destroyed. They hardly work anywhere in the country. So we've got massive transportation of kind of goods that should never be transported over land by road. They should be like manganese and coal and iron ore, and those kind of bulk products are being transported by road. And they devastate roads. I mean, they smash roads and they cause horrific road accidents. And that's where we are in South Africa. And then obviously the distrust is manifest or manifold by the fact that our crime levels are so high in South Africa and our corruption is just rampant. So those are all the big things that turn off investment. And ever since the investor confidence locally and internationally waned after the passing of Nelson Mandela and, the moving on of Thabo Mbeki and the arrival of Jacob Zuma and state capture and all of those kind of things, we really are in a quandary. So I believe that this election is going to be fought on who offers the best economic alternative to the, overwhelmed ANC. And there's no doubt about that. No one even fights that debate anymore. Where you can go into any community and people will agree with you that the government is overwhelmed. They can't keep the water coming out of the taps. They can't keep electricity, going. There's no reliable services of any kind. You receive them intermittently now across the country where the ANC is in power. So this election is not really going to be just about, whether you've got load shedding and whether, you have water in your taps and whether there's sewage running down your street. It's going to be about the economy, I believe.
Well, I can't disagree with you even for a moment on that one, Athol. It's interesting. As a foreign investor, people ask me, especially for my business consulting services, about investing in South Africa. I said, well, you can make money, but there's risk. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you're a corporation, if you're big enough, then the government will demand that you hand over a percentage of your equity to people who have no stake, who've made no commitment, who offer no skills, and bring you no advantage, not even business connections. So that's purely racist. That's based on skin pigmentation to perpetuate a situation that enriches an elite coterie of black elites, the nouveau riche, instead of the general population. But I said beyond that, the real issues are you have to provide your own security. You have to hire security forces, G4S or someone like that, to protect your business. Otherwise, it'll be robbed. Things will be stolen all the time. You have to deal with a dichotomy of a first world work ethic amongst people of all ethnicities and genders and races, and a third world approach where very low productivity is an issue. massive number of people infected with HIV, many of whom fall ill when their CD4 count falls below 200 or 300, and then they have to be away from work. You have tuberculosis issues. You have these roads you talked about, and I've been railing against that for ages, no pun intended, about, Van Riemen's Pass. Van Riemen's Pass is a disaster. It's a death trap, but those trucks coming up and down through there, clogging the roads, that highway, the main artery for all of Southern Africa coming up from Durban, is being destroyed by this heavy volume of traffic that's on there that should all be on the rails, that have been just looted and destroyed. Going up to Northwest, looking at the rails, there's nothing there. They even got so far as to dig up the copper in the communications lines that were put there for the, it's just, anyway, we could go on forever about this, but as a foreign direct investor, I've got to provide my own electricity. I've got to provide my own security. I've got to provide my own infrastructure. I've got to repair my vehicles all the time. I've got an inefficient, ineffective workforce. Why in the world would I go to South Africa? It's, Cyril Ramaphosa, during the Ramaphoria nonsense in early 2018, promised to bring $100 billion of foreign direct investment to South Africa. The outflow of capital from South Africa is very much in the opposite direction. It's really sad. So what can ActionSA bring to the table economically? Is there a focus on market-based things, or what's your approach? Because most of the parties' answer to garner votes is, we're going to give you this handout, we're going to give you this handout, not we're going to help the private sector create jobs. Does the ActionSA party have a focus on that?
Yeah, look, I'll come to that in a minute, but I do want to just comment about what you were saying about foreign investors, what they'd have to provide to make their business successful. I do believe that South Africa remains a country of unbelievable potential. We are the gateway to Africa. We are also geopolitically perhaps more strategically located now than ever before, with what's happening in the Suez Canal, with the Houthis and the war going on there. We've got the whole world shipping coming right past our door. We are really going to have to look at our productivity of our ports. Our three major ports are the three worst performing in the world with regards to a World Bank survey on productivity. So the ships don't even want to stop in South Africa. They pay too much demurrage. It takes too long to load and offload a ship. And that's also hurting us really badly economically, because we produce some of the best citrus and other deciduous fruits that are sold all over the world, and our shipping is so bad that it compromises the fruit, whilst traveling to reach its destination. And if you spend an extra week or so loading, perishable goods, you compromise its shelf life. So these are the things that we're challenged with. But also, Chris, South Africans that live in South Africa, also who pay tax, they have to have a parallel service delivery structure that they have to pay for over and above tax. They have to have private security because they can't rely on the police. They have to have private medical aid because they can't go to a state hospital or rely on an ambulance to fetch you if you have an incident or an accident. They've got to send their kids to private school because the public schools have collapsed. So essentially, South Africans are taxed doubly because they pay tax and do not receive the services that taxpayers should from the government, and then have to do it privately. So it's tough going in South Africa. So we have said we're not making any promises, no pie in the sky promises from us. Our president is a businessman who became a very successful businessman during apartheid, and for a black person that was almost impossible. He managed to get that right. So he understands what makes the world go round, and that's a capitalist economy, and he's an avowed capitalist, and unashamedly so, which is great. We also have stated that we will do away with broad-based black economic empowerment, because it's not broad-based whatsoever. It's about people who are connected to the government. And I go to meetings every single day of my life, and I'm in black communities, and I ask them in their thousands, have you benefited from broad-based black economic empowerment? The answer is a universal no. So it's just a get-rich-quick scheme for the people who are closest to government. They get all the big tenders, and those that don't even get tenders, they muscle their way into those that have got tenders and demand. At first, it was a 30% stake. Now it's gone up to 50%. And we have construction mafia that if you win a tender and you don't give them what they want, they will shut down your construction business. They won't allow construction to take place unless you cut them in. And these are people that don't even have a wheelbarrow, but profess to be in the construction industry. They have no engineers, they have no capacity, they have no infrastructure, they have nothing. In fact, all they want is they are greedy, and they want a part of the action, and they want to horn their way in there. So we've said that we will do away with broad-based black economic empowerment, and we've got an offer to redress the past called inclusive economic empowerment, where everyone, regardless of race or color, who cannot make it, hasn't got a job, who needs to try and find a job or to start a business, they can make an application to the Opportunity Fund, which will be funded by a levy that will be levied on all businesses in South Africa, because cost of compliance for BEE is around 4 to 6%. So the levy will charge no more than what people are currently paying to be compliant for BEE and deriving no benefit from that. And we will reinvest 25% of that annually, but we will ring fence 10% for higher education, tertiary education. 30% will go to the establishment of entrepreneurship schemes to assist young people to get into their own jobs, to create their own company. And then 35% will go to improving infrastructure and up-servicing underserviced communities. So we've got our own scheme, and we also have what you would call a universal basic income grant, where you can make an application, and if you qualify, that you would get 760 Rand a month for the first year to either go and look for a job or to start a business, 1,100 Rand a month for the second year, and then 1,600 Rand a month for the third year, and thereafter you're on your own. And if you've made it through there and you've got a job or you've started a small business, then you obviously don't need any more support from the government. The government are currently giving all poor South Africans, indigent South Africans, 350 Rand a month. Chris, I don't know what that's equivalent is, less than $20. It's about $15 a month. It cannot sustain anybody. It can't even sustain anyone's drinking habit, let alone sustain them for food for a month. And we believe that those are the kind of initiatives that will get South Africans working again, rather than deepening this kind of dependency that the ANC government has done. We have a president that goes to the State of the Nation address and breastbeats about the fact that in 1994, 8 million South Africans were dependent on social welfare, but now that there are 28 million South Africans dependent on social welfare. Now, to me, that is just mad. I mean, any president who declares that should be removed from office immediately. We believe that we would be trumpeting every million South African less dependent on social welfare, and that's our objective. We plan to bring that number way down to even below what they were in 1994, because the curse of dependency is that you are manipulated by the government, and that manipulation is compounded when the voters are so dependent that they will do almost anything to keep that money or fear of losing it. And then you have a government that takes those people for granted and says they're so stupid they'll carry on voting for us anyway, so regardless what we do to them. So the job of opposition parties and parties like ActionSA is to educate voters and to tell them that there is life after the ANC, and in fact there's a much better life after the ANC. There are many examples in South Africa where the ANC have lost government and things have improved. Herman Mashaba was the mayor of Joburg, and he certainly made improvements there. And I remember when I was the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, we went from being the second worst metro to the second best metro in 1 year. And by the end of my second year in office, we had the same credit rating as the city of Cape Town. So it can be done. Things can be turned around. But unfortunately, in countries where graft and corruption become commonplace, the majority of the people who are in office, not the people, the man and the woman in the street, the majority of the people who are in office prefer chaos than order and progress, because chaos can be exploited. Now, the best analogy I can think of, the best hunting animal, most successful hunting animal on the African continent is not the lion, it's the wild dog. Because what wild dogs do, they hunt in packs and they cause chaos. And once there's chaos amongst a herd of antelope, they identify their prey and run them down and they have a meal. So they exploit chaos just like what the ANC are doing at the moment.
No, that's a brilliant analogy, and that's exactly what wild dogs do. In fact, I've seen many packs of them in the Okavango and elsewhere. They intentionally cause chaos and strike fear in their prey, and then they look for the ones who make the mistakes, and they go for them. absolutely correct on that 100%. It's interesting what you say there. I think that maybe the challenge for ActionSA is to get that word out to people, to let them know their positions more clearly. That's probably the biggest challenge. In politics, of course, it's whether people like it or not, it's not all about money, but money certainly plays a role, and you need to have the resources to get out there to do that. But let me ask a question. You're in the Eastern Cape, and as you said, it's a beautiful location. The province is lovely, but there is some seriously bad economic situations taking place in much of the Eastern Cape. A story that I find heart-wrenching, and unfortunately, we keep telling this tale over and over again. Again, last week, a 3-year-old child at a kindergarten creche expired after falling into a pit latrine unattended. Who sends a 3-year-old to the toilet, particularly a hole in the ground, and they die from choking on feces? It's a really sad story. It's not a one-off. It keeps happening. We had a situation in Nelson Mandela Bay where you formerly were the mayor, obviously not during your time, but when the ANC took over again, that the local government turned back 63 million rand of money that was given by the national government to ensure that small children and toddlers and infants were being fed a feeding program. They didn't have to dispense the money. They sent it back, and 15 children starved to death, according to the media. It's really heart-wrenching to see what's going on there. Does this even affect voter sentiment at all? Are people even paying attention to these tragic stories? Because this shouldn't be happening. South Africa has immense wealth, immense human capital, and immense potential. Eskom was the #1 utility in the world. It was voted just 2 decades ago. This shouldn't be the way it is. The ANC's battle plan is to blame apartheid. And while you can blame many things on the National Party and racial segregation and dispossession, at some point, people have to grow up and take responsibility for what's happening around them. Is this the election where we see people paying attention to school books that were never delivered because of corrupt BEE tenders in the Eastern Cape, and schools, 400 of them in the Eastern Cape alone, that still have pit latrines 30 years after the ANC took over governance? It's mind-boggling. I'm gobsmacked when I look at those figures, Athol.
Well, Chris, human beings are not stones. And even though, we can take a lot of punishment, and the people in this province especially are very good at taking punishment, because the ANC still has the highest majority of all the provinces here, and we come last on almost any imaginable index. Except we come first with regard to crime, we come first with regard to unemployment, and we come first with those kind of incidences that you've just mentioned. So I went to the family of the 3-year-old child. They live in a place called Duncan Village, which is the second biggest township. Sorry, not Duncan Village, Danzane, which is the second biggest township outside of Soweto. And I went to meet the family 2 weeks ago, Chris, and it was the most poignant visit. I can't explain it to you. So how do you go to a family and what do you say to them who have lost a 3-year-old child and a grandchild? That is, people say that child drowned in a pit latrine. You don't drown in a pit latrine. You die of asphyxiation because of the gases. So I went there, and it was just, awful. And I was there with a couple of my colleagues, and we just literally went to pay our respects. We didn't know what political party these people supported or anything like that. And we said a prayer, and we sang some songs, and then they started telling us what happened. And the family then said that they'd gone to the local, can't think of the name now, the mortuary, to get a death certificate. And they were told that the doctor wasn't there, he was ill, and there was only one doctor for the whole eastern part of the province. And the grandmother was explaining that the grass was sort of waist high, and the place was derelict and neglected, and all they wanted to do was bury this child and move on in their lives. And they couldn't do that without a death certificate. So I made a commitment that I'll phone a former colleague of mine who's stationed in the Premier's office, and she helped me, and within 2 days they had their death certificate. But I left there, and I felt really choked up, and I walked out the house, and I was waiting in my car for my colleagues, and one of the colleagues came and said that the old grandmother who'd been talking, and in the beginning she was hardly animate at all, but she became more and more animated. She asked for a membership form for our party and a T-shirt. Well, I was like gobsmacked, and I gave them the membership form and the T-shirt, and my colleague went back. And then she came back and said, "You won't believe it, the whole family wants a T-shirt. and they want to wear it to the funeral. Now, when I said to you human beings on stones, I have no doubt that because of their demographic and where they live, that their lifelong support would have been for the ANC, but it changed overnight when they discovered just how callous and uncaring the government is through their own tragic experience. So I have no doubt that people will not continue. I think many will still, but as I keep saying, there were 18 million South Africans that didn't vote. So they've literally cut their umbilical cord. They haven't convinced themselves yet to vote for another party. And hopefully they will identify that in ActionSA, maybe some other parties. But once that constituency is remobilized, we're going to have change very quickly in South Africa. I recall before I became a mayor in Nelson Mandela Bay, it was an ANC-dominated municipality. There was a 17 percentage point swing in that election. We grew by 10% and the ANC declined by, we grew by 7% and the ANC declined by 10%. And the ANC had said to me in the build-up to that election that there will never be a DA mayor in Nelson Mandela Bay until Christ returned. Now, there have been 3 DA mayors since then, and I'm a Christian, and I believe in Christ, and he hasn't returned yet, but there have been 3. So never is a very long time in politics, and I believe that we are on the eve of a new political dispensation, albeit in coalition governments where there'll have to be power sharing. But the days of ANC domination and hegemonic control of the whole country are over, because I think people have just had enough of the incompetence, corruption, and ineptitude of the ANC.
Well, I agree 100%, and I think the right words you struck there, Cord, are callous indifference to South Africans. That's the bottom line. A government that does not care. It's too busy focused on gobbling up tenders and doling out patronage and interfering in the affairs of countries outside South Africa, while ignoring the plight of the Rohingya in Myanmar, ignoring the plight of Sudanese all over Sudan and in Darfur, and the list goes on and on. Yet the ruling government wants to stick its nose into Gaza. But we're short on time because your other commitment cut us short here. So I want to give you a chance here as we wrap up. We didn't get a chance to talk about the multi-party charter, something I was present for the formation of in Emperor's Palace, and I've covered quite a bit. I also I've reached out to Michael Beaumont and waiting for a response back to talk to Herman Mashaba again, as well as Michael Beaumont. But I do have another ActionSA candidate on tomorrow, a lady from the Western Cape who's wheelchair bound, Natuko. Looking forward to talking to her. Okay.
She's a wonderful lady, and I think you'll have a great conversation with her. She's an inspiration. Look, I was part of the multi-party charter. I spent 10 months with Michael Beaumont attending bi-weekly meetings. It was hard business in the beginning. We had the biggest party of the group, very arrogant, very domineering, unyielding. That changed over time, and I think at the end of the day, we forged a pre-electoral pact. It's not a coalition, it's a pre-electoral pact. The first of its kind in South Africa. The one good thing that has come out of that is that we have spent just over a year now talking to each other, learning, how to deal with each other, who to trust and who not to trust, which is good because our constitutional dispensation says that after 14 days after an election, we need to put a government together, and 14 days is never enough time to speak to other political parties to come up with a coherent option. What happens then is, and it's all about horse trading and position mongering, and that's never a good option. So I think the weeks and months that we put into this multi-party charter have been very positive in that regard. I also think that there's some parties that are outside of the multi-party charter who will move quickly towards the multi-party charter after the elections, because they'll have 2 clear options. They can either align with the ANC, MK, and the EFF, or they can align with the multi-party charter. And I think self-respecting political parties who promised something different to their voters will not simply just go back into a coalition with the ANC. I think many parties have felt just what it's like being in a coalition with the ANC. They're the most unaccommodating, adulterous kind of organization to be in a partnership with. So I think we're a long way off at the moment. If we had an election today, if we had 40% between all the participating members of the multi-party charter, it would be a great result. But remember still, 40% is the biggest block of non-ANC votes that have ever been put together. So it is still historical. It might not get us past the post of 50% plus one, but it is enormous progress. And I think that there are a number of other political parties that are watching very carefully, that don't want to align just now before the election, but that will quickly change their position after the election. So I don't think it's been a waste of time, Chris. I think it's been illuminating for many of us. And I think it'll make the negotiations post 29 May very, very interesting. And just before I leave, it'll be completely unfair of me to talk all about South Africa and our elections. I know you guys are going into probably one of your most fraught elections ever, with two really dismal options. And it's tragic that politics all over the world, in the United Kingdom, Canada, South Africa, that we've got such limited options, and the people who are contesting for power are derided all over the world. And it's quite a shame that the mighty United States can come up with the two candidates that are currently in the offing. I know it's not finalized completely yet, but it is quite strange that politics has reached such a low level. One of the main underpinning values of ActionSA is ethical leadership. And I think there's a dearth of ethical leadership all over the world. And our president, Herman Mashaba, reminds me a lot of Lee Kuan Yew, who was described by three words. The three words were meritocracy, pragmatism, and honesty. And I think Herman Mashaba has that in spades full. And it's a pity that more of our leaders across the globe don't have those kind of qualities.
Well, Athol Trollip, I have to agree 100%. Again, just for the interest of full disclosure for the audience, not a fanboy, but a huge fan of your time as mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. I really respected that. I was impressed by it. You dealt with a government that had to deal with it being undermined every single day in council, and efforts to unseat you, repeated efforts for votes of no confidence that were unmerited, and it was an amazing job you did there. And as you said, look at what happened in Nelson Mandela Bay in just 12 months, despite all of that. It's pretty amazing. So there's a little pat on the back. I don't know if you need that or want that, but nonetheless, it's my pleasure to give that. It's a pleasure to have you back on the program again. I've got another interview right after this, so we're going to wrap it up here, and I want to thank you, and you're welcome to come back on the program. I'm currently waiting for the passport agency, which is not the State Department. They hire contractors to do it, to get my passport back to me. It was due, the 10-year period was up in June, so I couldn't come to South Africa because no 6 months. If, however, my passport is back, my intent is to get to Cape Town and to Port Elizabeth, Nelson Mandela Bay for the elections. And if so, it'd be great to link up with you again. We were unable to link the last time because my calendar was short. But thank you so much, Kela Boa, Bye Donkey. It's a pleasure as always.
Yeah, Chris, thank you very much. I'm always happy to be on your program. If you ever come to back, well, I know whenever you do come back to South Africa, hopefully you'll come and visit me in Port Alfred. I'll take you fishing. Beautiful part of the world. But also I'd like to say to the people of the United States, you need people like Chris Wyatt to become public representatives, and then hopefully we can start improving the system, because, man, I've seen some really poor public representatives, and I think, Chris, you'd make a great public representative. It's not a mutual admiration show here. I mean what I say. You've put a hell of a lot into politics. You know more about politics than most people I've ever met. Good luck. All the best.
Well, thank you very much, Athol Trollip. I'll let you drop off, and then I'll close it up here. Folks, Athol Trollip, the provincial chairman for the Eastern Cape for ActionSA, sharing with us his thoughts today about the upcoming elections and the prospects for ActionSA and for South Africa. Thank you very much for your patience. We're going to break now, and Donald Brown, a candidate for the referendum party, will be joining me in just a moment. He's been very patiently waiting. You'll be automatically redirected, so don't go anywhere. We're going to start here in just a minute. So thank you so much for your time, and my special thanks to my guest, Athol Trollip. It's always a pleasure to have him back on the program, and we'll be back with you here in less than 2 minutes. Cheers, folks.